Hello and welcome to Theology Unleashed. So today I want to talk about Christians and meat eating. Also this is probably my first video I'm posting to the channel, recorded on my new DJI Pocket 3 and as a driving talking head video. Thinking of doing more of these, so let me know what you think. So recently on Facebook I've come across some discussions where Christians were defending meat eating, and I wanted to give some thoughts on it. Of course, as a Chaitanya Vaishnava, we are strict vegetarians. We're lacto-vegetarians, so the vegans could of course have their arguments against us and our consumption of dairy products. And I'm open to, I'm very empathetic with some of their arguments, because I think animal suffering does matter, and to be morally upstanding human beings, we need to care about the suffering our lives create for others. And eating meat, especially in a modern context where we have factory farming, causes an incredible amount of animal suffering. It's basically a holocaust every day inside of those slaughterhouses and inside of some of the factory farming operations that they have, for example, with chickens, battery hens. So that's kind of a bit of a preamble about the importance of compassion. David Palman made a point saying, how do you say it? I guess the issue of animal suffering has just never resonated with me. I replied to his comment saying, does your callousness come from your Christianity, or is it despite your Christianity? He didn't reply to my comment, which doesn't surprise me, but I'm not saying David Palman is like representative of the Christian perspective or anything. That's just his personal response. And he did get pushback, I think partly from other Christians and maybe from atheists too. But he's a bit of a Christian philosopher, and he doesn't seem to think that his Christianity leads him to being called to have compassion for animals. So that's interesting. So I guess part of this video is explaining how, pointing out a problem that Christianity as a religion doesn't seem to care about animal suffering, and it seems to actively do so. It's not just a passive not caring about animals, it's pretty active. So David Palman's perspective there is one example of that. Another example I'll give is I've seen a lot of people leave bhakti, and usually when that happens they remain vegetarian for the rest of their lives. At least it's pretty common for that to happen. My understanding that is when you practice bhakti, then there's some transformation in your heart that happens, and the initial stage of that, we're trying to develop love of God. We're trying to purify our hearts to quite a high extent, but a real initial thing that happens when we clean our heart is we start to develop compassion for all living entities, including animals, and that kind of removes the ability to enjoy animal products. So here's where I'll add a disclaimer that historically there have been many locations on the world, on the planet, where eating meat was necessary for survival. So I think eating meat, this is one argument Christians will give. The human form of life is human. That's not how they word it. They say, human life is more valuable than animal life. So eating meat's fine. We need it for nutrition, and that's total crap. That's not true at all. You don't need meat in a modern context where we have modern farming techniques, global supply chains, and supplements. It's totally unnecessary to eat meat pretty much ever. Unless you're stranded on a desert island, you can pretty easily follow a vegetarian diet and be totally healthy. I think following a vegan diet and being healthy, especially if you're raising small children, is much more difficult, because dairy provides quite a lot of nutrition, and it's hard to get everything from a vegan diet. It can be done, but you need to supplement things like B12, iron, and probably some other things too, especially for children growing. there's been cases where people raised their kid vegan and didn't give it B12, and they suffered nerve damage from the malnutrition. So dairy, there's more of an argument for than there is for meat. So where was I? I was talking about how, so these arguments don't say no one should ever eat meat. They say we shouldn't cause unnecessary suffering to anyone, including animals. And the necessary thing is the key part. So if you need meat to survive, that's different, but that's not the case today. So that argument doesn't work. So Christianity and Islam and a lot of these other religions that are big on meat eating, they developed in a part of the world where it was very difficult to get all of your nutritional needs met without eating meat. The Middle East, or the Near East, where Christianity develops, kind of a desert climate. It's kind of hard to be vegetarian in a climate like that. So I can see why a religion that grew up in a part of the world and a place and time where meat was necessary to survival might defend meat eating today, but I think they need to get with the times. So moving on to some of my interactions on social media with Christians, one of the defenses they give is this old idea that you'll have to forgive me for not quoting the exact Christian philosophers. I could pull in ChatGPT and get the answers, but I'll bring up the principles and that should suffice. So some Christian philosophers have raised this idea that animals don't have souls, or they have a different kind of soul from us. I see that as, well, we can call it speciesism, but I think it's equally, perhaps not equally, I think mistreating humans is worse than mistreating animals, but I don't think it's that different. I think it's morally abhorrent to think of anyone as less valuable than you, as their suffering not mattering. So if we think animals are less than us and we can do what we like with them, I think that's totally morally abhorrent. For the same reasons and exactly the same kinds of way that racism is morally abhorrent. Because what we have is another living entity in a body that doesn't look like ours, that's different from ours in whatever ways, and then we're placing ourselves as superior based on external things about the body we occupy. Now, I guess this bhakti idea of the soul and us all being equal, even with different animals, is kind of informed by the Vedas and an Eastern worldview that Christians don't share. But I think Christians can still adopt the idea that we're all children of God. We all have something in common. So we think we've been animals in a past life and could be animals in a future life, depending how we behave in this life. Christians don't think that. But I don't think you need to think that in order to see that here's another living entity, a child of God, and my choices determine how many of them suffer and to what degree. And so people like Richard Dawkins have said quite poignantly, I think, that just like we look back at 100 years ago with racism and at other times in history where whole societies were acting in ways that we see as morally abhorrent, that similarly in the future people will look back on how we treat animals with factory farming and see it as totally morally abhorrent. And I hope that's true. I hope society wakes up and develops some more, a better moral compass and learns the value of all life, not just human life, and starts to act on that. So yeah, I was having some exchanges with some Christians. One of the exchanges was sparked by a meme that was shared in the Capturing Christianity Facebook group. I'll probably chuck the meme on the screen now, but it's basically pointing out what prompted me to do this video and to finally address Christians on meat eating is the comment sections I've seen under this post, and there were a few other posts that came up in my Facebook feed where Christians were defending meat eating using some pretty weak arguments in my eyes. And so the meme is pointing out the absurdity that comes from thinking God cares deeply about our sexual lives, but doesn't care at all about animal suffering. And some of the comments were saying, oh yeah, no, but what goes on in our sex lives matters an immense amount because, and they give their reasons. And I don't want to get into that so much. I could agree or disagree, and whatever the case, let's just assume for the sake of argument that it is extremely important what people do in their sex life. I mean, we can all agree that there's certain forms of sexual perversion that are extremely harmful to society. That's why people go to jail for things like rape. And so there's a certain amount, there's lines that can be crossed with that. But without getting into that, let's just say that, yeah, okay, you're allowed to care deeply about that. That's fine. But then why not also care about animal suffering? Why only care about what teenagers get up to behind closed doors? Like, why not care about what's going on with this basically daily holocaust for these poor animals? And of course, that basically neutralizes that argument, because it's like, well, yeah, well, I mean, it's not either or. Like, basically, it's pretty clear that Christianity doesn't, at least large portions of the Christian world do not care an awful lot about animal suffering. And the evidence for that is that people like David Palman, who is somewhat of a Christian philosopher, can either because of or despite, no, I don't think it's despite his Christianity. I don't think anyone in his church or anything he reads in his Christian books is telling him he should stop eating meat and he should care more about animal suffering. I think it's pretty, and from the comment sections from these Christians, and from the fact that, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I brought it up earlier, but I didn't finish the point. People can leave bhakti and not start eating meat again because I think they develop compassion from their bhakti practice. But there's one situation where I've seen these people start eating meat again, and that's when they become a Christian. And not just that, I mean, some people leave bhakti, become a Christian, and don't start eating meat. That happens plenty. But not many people leave bhakti and start eating meat without becoming a Christian. So if people who've learned the value of compassion for animals can become Christians and then unlearn it, I think that's pretty clear evidence that Christianity does not care about animal suffering. And I mean, I think you can make a pretty good case that compassion, including for animals, is a kind of essential virtue to have if you want to call yourself religious or spiritual. So my message to Christians is to really think about what it means to love God and love all of God's children, and whether basically when you purchase meat, you're paying for a daily holocaust to go on for the animals that donated or were evicted from those bodies in order for them to end up on your plate. So yeah, if you think that's compatible with being religious and spiritual, I don't know what else to say. But I'm very interested in debating this with some Christians. Maybe someone wants to come on the channel, or we can do it on another channel and debate whether eating meat is compatible with spiritual values. Yeah, I was planning to read through the comments that I'd had in these exchanges a bit more before coming on the channel. I can't remember more of the argument these Christians. Oh yeah, here's one of the arguments. So it's basically a moral epistemology. What do you call it? There's in the problem of evil, you have skeptical theism. So this is a kind of skeptical theism argument. So skeptical theism is where, in solving the problem of evil, you just say, yeah, but maybe God has some reason for allowing that suffering to happen that we just don't know about. So it's just raising skepticism over our ability to accurately assess the situation. So this Christian was saying to me in Facebook comments exchanges that, well, just like, you know, in the past people thought slavery was okay and now we think slavery is not okay, so our moral intuitions are just subjective and can't be trusted to give us accurate information. So you're just using your moral intuitions to think that we should care about animal suffering. And I mean, if you're on the same page as me, that'll sound silly to you and you probably won't need to hear a response to it. But my replies to that sort of thing are to say, well, I think we do have moral intuitions that can be trusted, and our ability to understand the situation, you know, we can have moral intuitions that turn out to be wrong, but it's a progressive thing. Like you can be dreaming and think you're awake, but then when you wake up, you know that you woke up from a dream. So similarly, you can be like in a sort of degraded state where you think something's moral, but you can wake up for that and then realize it was right. So, you know, when you get your act together and clean your life up, you can come to realize moral truths that you failed to see before. So we can refine our consciousness to where we see morality in deeper ways. Plus, I didn't mention this on Facebook, but what's the alternative? If you want to say we can't use our intuitions to pick out what's morally right and wrong, then what are we going to do? Abandon our moral compass and stop listening to that little voice inside our head that says this is wrong, don't do this, or what that person over there is doing is wrong, don't let them do it? Like, I think that people trusting the moral compass inside their heart is extremely important, because if you take that away, then you've got nothing. Like, okay, am I just going to believe what the Bible says or what some religious scripture says? Well, think about all the suicide bombers and other religious extremists who do all sorts of things because maybe they've thrown away their moral compass and just have decided to believe what some book or some church leader has told them they should believe or do. We really need to be tuning into that inner feeling inside ourselves that gives us a sense of morality, but we also need to be refining that to seeing higher and higher truths and, you know, higher and higher virtues, to have higher and higher virtues guiding us. So I think that argument's pretty terrible, because then he just says, yeah, but you're just making it up, so you should just believe what the Bible says. And it's like, well, why should I believe the Bible over the Bhagavad Gita or the Bhagavatam? So yeah, I think I'll wrap it up there. There's probably lots more to be said on this subject and lots more arguments from Christians to reply to. So maybe I'll get some comments under this video. I'll share this in a Facebook group and get some of those comments and do another one. So if you like this sort of stuff, be sure to subscribe. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And this is probably my first talking head video done while driving on the channel. So I can easily do a lot more videos of this format because I do a lot of driving. So be sure to let me know if this sort of video is good, and I will catch you in the next one. Hare Krishna.